Okay, we're back again on the Meat and Potato Show. We had a battery failure on one of the cameras here, but we're back with Colonel Reasor. Colonel, continue your story. I'll just pick it up right there from your story.
Sure. And so, I looked at a 13-year-old boy and I go, how would you feel if your father threw you and your mother out in the desert to die with just a little bit of water and bread, and you passed out, and your mom awoke you later and you lived the story? He'd be pretty pissed at Dad. And so the folks that are pissed at Dad are your Arabs. And they actually list the first transgressor as Isaac. And that's the very first person in the Quran that says his bad guy. And from the Jews' perspective, they're like, well, you're actually the descendant of the stepmother, not the actual mother, so you don't get God's blessing, but you're the younger kid. So if you go back to the history of the hatred here, it goes all the way back to Abraham. Now Moses, which the left still thinks is a mythical figure, but it doesn't matter if they do. These folks, the guys in the Quran, they believe in Moses because Moses' name is mentioned in there. And Moses wrote that the Arabs, the radical Arabs, would be a wild man. His hand will be against all hand, and his hand will be against his neighbor. And I think that's Genesis 16:10-12. That's what Moses wrote about this group of people. Now, from my personal experience, I've been with Saudi Arabians. They seem wonderful people. The folks that were downtown were wonderful. The loyalty were wonderful. And I didn't get the impression that they were wild men. I felt that they were very rational, reasonable men. I went to Kuwait after we had won the war, and we were training the Kuwaitis on how to fly their new F-18. So we're going to talk some air power with them. And I went to get a haircut, just at a Holiday Inn, which is a 5-star hotel there in Kuwait City. But I sat down in a barber chair and I had my legs crossed, and I had the bottom of my foot pointing to the guy next to me, which is a huge insult.
Really?
Don't shake with your left hand. Ladies, don't make eye
show the bottom of your
contact.
feet. I remember that now. You're right. Continue, sir. Yeah.
And I had my foot up to this guy, and I saw him get so enraged. I put my foot down, and I apologized in Arabic, and it didn't matter. This guy was so enraged and so upset. I had my 9mm with me, and I reached under it, and all the people that work there are normally foreigners, Pakistanis, India folks that are foreigners, and so the guy who was cutting my hair heard me rack my 9mm under my shirt. He got kind of nervous and sweaty, and I couldn't take my guns off the guy because I thought I was going to kill him. There's no doubt in my mind that if he thought he could jump out of that chair and machete me to death right there in the chair, he would. And so the wild man ethic, the wild man narrative, if the Middle East didn't have this wild man narrative where each hand will be against the other hand, Israel would be obliterated.
That's true.
There's no doubt in my mind. If all these guys got together, joined hands and be friends and went after Israel, Israel would get. Israel's only 45 miles wide.
That's right.
So it's not a big place. And the war between Israel and these groups of people has been going on for 1,400 years. Goliath, the Philistine, came from the Gaza Strip. The Assyrians, up in the northeast corner, came from the Golan Heights. If you go out to the Jordanian Valley, now you're talking to folks that killed, so they've gone back and forth. And Babylon, right out of Baghdad, with Xerxes 1 and 2, it has been historically, it's interesting, War College says that 80% of everyone who's ever died in combat has been within a 1,000-mile radius of Baghdad. Because of the natural flow through Constantinople there.
It's true.
And the national, the trade routes, and basically this war that was started with Abraham's, it's a family conflict. They're cousins. So, unfortunately they know they're related, and they're both claiming all the same things, and they are wild about it because they haven't been able to get Israel off of what they believe has been their property for the past 2,000 years. When the Romans came in 70 AD and stomped the Jews and crushed them and said, get out of here, and dispersed the Jews all over the world, from that point on, that has been Arab land.
Yeah.
So, in 1940, was it 46? It was 46, wasn't it?
46, 46,
yeah.
Right after the war, and then it was 48 that the UN charter was signed, the birth of Israel.
That's right. So when that happened, it was fight on. And so when you hear things like, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They're talking about the Jordan River all the way to the Mediterranean. They will continue until they try to wipe out every Jew. And it will be, in America, we need to get over the fact that we are in constant conflict. You know, I listen to Alex Jones. I mean, I enjoy much of what he has to say. Sometimes I think he's a little weird. And on occasion, he goes off the scientific edge and claims things that just can't scientifically be true.
He does.
In his show, he comes on and asserts that you know, when we're talking about the Middle Eastern situation and what was happening over there, he's asserting that we are in constant warfare for money. And I have to just kind of throw my arms down and go, you're not historically military literate.
Right.
As soon as 9/11, the very original, happened, America will always be fighting terrorists around the world. We just have to get over it.
Yeah, we have to get used to it, not get over it, get used to it. And just, it's going to be a paradigm in our lives. I mean, our children are going to be fighting this war. I've said it to my children. I've had that conversation. People think I'm crazy, and they do. They use the war for oil rationale. They use the war for money, and even sometimes they'll throw in it's a Bilderberg conspiracy. They'll throw that thing around every once in a while. Irregardless of whatever theory you have, or crackpot theory, or whatever. You are absolutely correct, Colonel. After those buildings fell, I looked at that and I watched that, and I spoke to my brother-in-law on the phone because he lived in New Jersey, and two of his sons live in New York City, and one of them actually worked at the World Trade Center. One of them was on his way into work. He had gotten off the train, realized that I'm early for work. I'm going to go down to the Dunkin' Donuts a couple of blocks over and read the paper and have a coffee and wait a few minutes. That's when the first plane hit, so he was very lucky. So when I talked to my brother-in-law, I said, you know, is everybody all right? Yep, everyone's fine. Sean's okay. Yep, that's that. Yeah, Timmy and everybody else. I was like, oh, thank God. And I said, so Rich, what's going on here? What do you think? He says, well, you're looking at tomorrow morning, we're all going to wake up and we're going to be at war for the rest of our lives. And I said, the rest of it? He says, this is it. He says, we're not battling just an enemy, we're battling a way of life, we're trying to defend a way of life, and this is something that will never go away, and children's children will most likely be fighting this. And I have used the term before, and I'm going to say it because it's my show, and I have absolutely no qualm saying whatever I want on my show. You know, it's going to be a genocide. Either they're going to do genocide against us, or we're going to have to do genocide against them, because they're never going to stop. You could turn the place into a radioactive sheet of glass, and there will be one of them somewhere in the world who will wrap the towel around their head and stand in front of a camera with a mask on and the internet and cut somebody's head off, and it will never, ever stop.
Well, I totally agree with you, mainly because it's not regional, it's not government-sponsored, it's not identifiable by uniform military, that we can say, this is our objective to stop, you will not capitulate, sign, all those narratives for war are thrown out the window. We're not going to have a peace accord. It's not going to happen, because it is radicalism in Paris that is going to start a group that's going to bomb Paris. So we're talking about terrorism. We're fighting the ideology that they pick up the Quran, they read that it says the number one transgressor is Isaac, and those Jews and those Christians, even though Jesus is mentioned in there as a fantastic, wonderful, and even talks about the miracles that Jesus did. It talks about Mary. I think Mary's the only woman mentioned in the Quran. And it goes through and it talks about Christianity in very good terms. But then it goes out and says later on that you should behead non-believers in the later parts of the book. So if you're in the Middle East and you say, I'm a Christian, what you're saying to them is, I lay claim to Abraham. And so they're going to be very upset. And that's when we kind of make a mistake in our conversation with them. As we say, we're a Christian nation. Well, now they're saying, in their mind, that means we're a theocracy, and that our Bible governs us. They really do believe this. And I've had talks with Saudi princes that go, you guys are governed by the Bible, you are a Christian nation. You know, they can't understand our concept of we will not establish a church nor have any law prohibiting free exercise.
That's right. They can't. It's a concept completely devoid in their minds. The other thing, too, that I just thought of as you were talking is that the other thing that happens under an Islamic caliphate, and this is a fact, folks, you've just got to Just look at every nation in the Middle East that has fallen under strict Islamic rule, and you see one underlying fact is the physical destruction of that nation. Let me explain what I mean by that. In Israel, when they pulled out of parts of Gaza and they completely left, there were areas in Gaza that were Israeli controlled, Jewish controlled. There were farms, there were factories, there were buildings, there were housing complexes, landscaped, manicured lawns, clean streets, businesses thriving, things were going on. As soon as they pulled out, probably within about a year, all of these places went to complete pot. I mean, we're talking businesses shut down, the buildings ransacked, everything stolen. These housing complexes now are just trash dumps. There's trash in the streets. The places are a mess. The entire area is destroyed. The same thing is happening. Look at it in Iraq. Now, let's go back to Saddam Hussein for a little bit here. I'm talking to you, Reid, and I'm talking to my others. Let's go back to Saddam Hussein a little bit. Now, say all you want about Saddam Hussein. The guy was a complete dictator and a despot. But even under Saddam Hussein, you could go down the streets of Baghdad. They were clean, beautiful buildings, businesses were happening, things were going on. You could even go out to some of the other areas. Farms were happening, things were happening. The country was at least functioning. Now that you've got this going on with ISIS, you go to those towns, you go to those farms, you go to those factories. They're bombed out, they're burned out, they're destroyed. ISIS is taking over, towns are looted, everything is completely wrecked. Everything is wrecked. Look at Syria. Yes, Assad, complete dictator. I completely agree. I completely agree with that. But even under Assad, Syria was a functioning nation. There were companies, businesses, things were going on, streets got clean, kids went to school, this, that, the other thing. Now look at it. Now, I know you can blame the war, but look at it. Look at what's happened now that these radical Islamics have taken over those areas. There's no business, there's no jobs. You can't even go to a park and push your kids on the swing set because they blew the place up. It's completely destroyed. Go ahead, Colonel. Take over.
Well, you're right, and part of that is the narrative of the nomadic culture, too. Anchoring in a place, and growing your own crops, and building an infrastructure, and going through agriculture, industrial, technology, and information is not in their playbook. That's not who they are. Who they are is I get my self-esteem and my value of self-worth by who I convert to Islam, and therefore I'm serving my Allah. And here are the means that I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell you about it. If you don't, I'm going to kill you. If you show up and say, I'm a Christian, that's probably going to kill you. If you show up and say, I'm a follower of the prophet Jesus, it will probably leave you alone because you're not claiming the land of Abraham. What you're saying is, I'm just following the prophet Jesus. It's a big difference to them culturally. So for them, their narrative of their theocracy is not, money in the stock market. That to them means nothing. It really is a worthless value. So when we in our Western culture, when we say, look at Israel, they're building, they're farming, they got hydroponics, they have industry, they're making machines, they're even feeding most of the folks
in the Middle East. That's
they
right.
really are. They're feeding the Islamics.
I know. Medical treatment and everything. I know. It's ironic.
But to them, it was like the Khobar Towers. If you remember, they got blown up by a terrorist attack by Islamics and killed a few of my friends. But the Khobar Towers there where we housed the U.S. folks was designed for the nomadic people as luxury apartments, and they were beautiful inside. I mean, marble floors, big showers, entertainment rooms, areas of social construct. You can walk to the shopping areas. It was a wonderful place. The nomadic folks said, I ain't going to live there. Where am I going to put my sheep? That's where the mind is.
Yeah.
So the value of wealth is I have 5 sheep, 4 daughters, 2 camels, and I have this trade rig. And my tents are sewn, I'm happy. And all my children are Islamic, and everybody I meet is Islamic, and those that aren't, I take care of it. So their value, their construct of value is caliphate and having a theocracy based on the Quran, and their family being in concert with that. That's their value of good. As far as the design now, some are different, like Saudi Arabian King Fahd's son said, look, we need to die, we need to stop this, we got to divest, we got to invest in technology, because eventually someone's going to come up and become a bigger oil supplier than us. And that's probably why Saudi Arabia is able to turn back the oil production and still maintain its wealth, because they have divested in a lot of...
The other one that I was thinking of too is Qatar. And the city of Doha is absolutely, it's phenomenal. Absolute, a very westernized city. Absolutely beautiful city. There was just, I'm thinking in my, I was watching a little video. It was back during the New Year's, and I had put on my YouTube page a whole bunch of fireworks displays from around the world. One of them was from Qatar, and just the Philharmonic Orchestra was playing. It was absolutely stunning, and I thought to myself, now if just the rest of them could be like that. You can hold on to Islam. By all means, hold on to your religion. Hold on to your faith. If it roots you and guides you, by all means do it. But why is Qatar an island or you just said Saudi Arabia too? They're becoming more technologically advanced. But why are there these islands in the sea of sand and nomads and sheep herders? And I don't know where it's going to. I think it's gonna, like I said, it's either going to be genocide to us, or we're going to have to commit genocide on that side in order to put it into it. Anyway.
Well, I think, I've heard those things too. Hey, why don't we just drop a nuclear weapon and then a couple and get it over with? And I go, well, because we just saw that for 2,000 years, a group of Christians outside of Mosul have been worshiping in private, and they have been hiding their faith for 2,000 years because they knew they'd be persecuted. Now, we installed the very first line when we wrote the Iraqi Constitution was freedom of religion. So these folks come out and go, yay, we can be Christians now. And they advertise their faith, and now what we've done is we've betrayed them because they expected us to come back in and stop these folks. And so when Obama pulled our forces out, basically we hung those Christians out to die. Literally, they're dead. And, they've cleaned Mosul out. There's not a Christian in the entire town.
Right.
And, the amount of murder, it's hard to estimate. But these folks have been living peacefully for 2,000 years, and we got them killed because we didn't back what we did. And, those guys that say it's for oil, I want to slap them because we haven't taken a drop of oil. We haven't taken a single payment. We haven't taken a single price reduction or payback. Saudi Arabia even offered every one of us pilots like a $12,000 check for our services. And our government said, no, we are not here for money. We're not mercenaries. We appreciate your offer, but thanks. And everybody, crew chiefs, maintenance, for a young maintainer, 12 grand check's kind of a nice thing. So every single military personnel that went to Saudi Arabia, they were going to pay them a check and say thank you. And we said no. So there is no financial gain. We haven't gotten anything out of oil, but we don't extract anything from them, and we've never gotten a payment or anything from them at all. So the narrative of the left, as you know, they seek facts to support their philosophy. And if you show them a fact that conflicts with their philosophy, either the fact's a lie, or you're a liar, or the person who did this study was a liar, or look at who funded this study, it just doesn't matter. Some of those. And to the far left fanatics, in their beliefs, that's exactly how Islamic extremists think. They're fanatics. And that's the difference we need to make. There are rational folks on the left that you can talk with and have a conversation. And there are those that turn around and go, I'm not going to talk to you. And on the Islamic side, when you have people and you start to talk about peace and negotiation, they're there. That is your Qatar, that's your UAE. Those are the folks that understand that the old nomadic ways, you could lead a lot better life than driving a camel around in the sand. Which, if that's your chosen life, then be fulfilled in that.
Hey, we do need sheep and we do need farms, and even they do too. And
yeah, but don't hold other people back from doing it because we believe that's the religious part of it. And so what we have to do is we have to identify the part that goes extreme and kill them. That can't be done at 30,000 feet. I can't do that in my jet at 30,000 feet. I've got to have the Navy SEAL. I've got to have the Marine Recon. I've got to have the Army Ranger. I need to have those folks on the ground, the forward tactical air patrol guys, the TACPs, that are going to identify, here's the radical cell, get the clearance for me, work it all the way back through the chain of command, and get Washington out of the targeting list, because they even approve anything that doesn't exist.
That's right.
So, what we've got to do is, here is, if Reasor were to design a war, this is what I would do. I'd put a B-2 or a B-1 chain of command and come all the way down through the Air Force. It takes 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Just to do that air support request. So what we need to do is delegate authority to the lowest level, trust the Navy SEAL, and say, you make the identification on the ground of whether this is a hostile target. Here's the rules. It can't be a friendly. It needs to be an enemy. You need to have them showing weaponry. They need to be identified with the group ISIS. Here is your intelligence support. There's a couple spies. There's some networks. You make the decision.
Yep,
you
make
call
the phone call.
Call the airstrike direct.
That's right. Make the phone call. Uplink it. And
Yeah,
go.
just call the guy and go deliver. Boom. And
Do you see a complete takeover of by ISIS? Do you see the whole thing just going to hell in a handbasket?
in this strategy, absolutely.
Absolutely.
There's absolutely no way they're not going to take Baghdad. There's no way they're not going to overthrow the government and kill the minister. Right now, and part of this is because Obama is a Muslim. You know, you and I, back in 2007, we looked and said, this guy's lying about his relationship with Bill Ayers. He's going to lie about everything.
Right.
If he's going to lie about something as simple as this.
Right.
This man has been a Muslim supporter and a Christian hater from the very beginning time he's taken office. The things that are going on in the military are ridiculous. So you can't even, the chaplain can't even have a cross on his door anymore or a Bible on his desk. He's a chaplain.
It's his job.
It's insanity. And it's just persecution of Christ. And same thing going on in Houston. And you and I had this conversation about the LGBT agenda, and we said it's not about equality, it's about persecuting Christians.
It is.
And as soon as you make marriage legal, now the next thing you're going to turn around is force the church to do it legally. And that's what's happening in Houston. That's what's happening around the nation. People are turning around and going, now we've got our legal end against you, Christians. And part of their venom is they believe in this stupidity of evolution. I mean, evolution is so scientifically disproved. If you're looking at scientific proofs, science doesn't ever prove anything. What it does is it disproves that there isn't something. I mean, it's a weird thing. The way you set up the structure of your tests is you go, the basic assumption is there is nothing here. And the alternate assumption is that there is something here that's important. And to reach the conclusion that there is something here important, you have to go through certain scientific steps. Evolution is done. DNA, microbiology, cancer research has killed it. But we can't win the narrative against the universities that won't even listen to their own research.
There's a documentary I put on my YouTube channel on one of the playlists about explaining away the existence of God, and it ties into the Big Bang theory, and that before the Big Bang there was nothing. Absolutely, there wasn't time, therefore there was no God. And I can't wrap my head around that because I don't believe in nothing. First of all, they forget one basic rule of, if we can talk nature and evolution here for a second, one of the basic rules of nature is nature abhors a vacuum. It always fills it with something. So for there to be nothing before the Big Bang is impossible. It's impossible for that to even occur because nature abhors nothing. It abhors a vacuum. It wants to fill it with something. Even though space itself, the universe, is a vacuum, there's no atmosphere, there's still stuff there. There's stuff floating around. There's rocks, there's debris, there's energy, there's atoms, there's things going on. Nature abhors a vacuum. So to say that God doesn't exist because we were created out of nothing, that's impossible. It's impossible because nothing doesn't exist. The term nothing, the physical thing, nothing, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Right. Well, I would agree with you. Up until Einstein said you could trade energy for matter. And you and I know our Testament says that God rested. So, I mean, he on the seventh day, whatever that little day, 6 days, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Sure. But the fact that God put everything in motion, I believe he was able to create matter out of energy of himself. And that's where the Big Bang, in my opinion, comes from. When scientists say Big Bang therefore disproves God, I go, no, to me it proves there was no light, and then bang, there it is.
There's light. It's true.
But, the thing that I would say to the folks locally, and they're like, gosh, this is a great conversation, what am I going to do? There's really three things you can do right now to help take our country back. Research the candidates thoroughly on what the platform is. If you're going to vote Democrat, you're voting for 1980s godless communists. They've shown their hand. There's plopped it on the table. They're doubling down to get communism. They want it. They want to dissolve the United States. They want to dissolve the Constitution. They want to dissolve our sovereignty. They want one world government under the UN. They believe they're going to be the players. We already have an oligarchy in Washington, D.C., controlled by big money and big money. Billions of dollars being spent there for power and money. The district of corruption is ridiculous. So find a vested local candidate who's not the established Republican. That's hard. And then vote for that person. The second thing that I would ask to do is pick a local issue that applies to everybody. And right now what's going on in your cities, in every city, is people on fixed income who are being taxed out of their homes. As the property values increase, which most people would say is a good thing, the property rates are also increasing. So people on fixed incomes are being either grandmothers, folks on, so they are losing their homes. So engage in why is the city raising the tax rates while the tax values are increasing. There's no reason to raise the rates. You're already getting an increase in revenue because the property values are increasing. So engage your local folks right there and go, show me your expenditures. Why are you wasting this money? You're forcing these people out of their homes and you're hurting them. The other thing you can do at the state level, so pick something locally, pick something at the state level. For me right now, what I'm working on is right there in Boston, Harvard University is kind of one of the leaders in the nation in doing this. Yale did it as well. Adopt a student bill of rights, which says you may not grade me down, persecute me, or hurt me for my religious or political views. Mm-hmm. Across the nation, I've done 2 studies that show significantly that if you announce that you're a conservative or a Christian or ex-military, worst is if you're all 3, you're going to be downgraded, punished, and even washed out of the program. Exactly. The persecution against conservatives in our universities is disgusting. So the Student Bill of Rights, and you can find it on the Students for Academic Freedom website. David Horowitz has been working on this for 10 years. Get your state legislature to pass it. Florida's done it, Colorado's done it. The second part of that is the Academic Bill of Rights. And that means if you want to go off and say, hey, you know what, we're all genderless beings, and this is actually a position from Texas State University. Professors there, one of the professors there, went out and said, look, I just want to let you know that you're not born men and women. You're born whatever you decide you want to be. So you can be 2/3 male, 1/8 female, yes. 1/7 transgender.
Let's screw up our kids even more.
Yeah, but the research says no. You're born male or female, and it continues over and over and over. No matter how they continue to do the research, it comes out and says little boys are born boys, little girls are born girls, and it's just they can't get their heads around that. That simple truth is so hard for them, and that's why you don't hear people saying, look, we found out that you're all born genderless, because every time you do the study, it slaps them in the face. All these boys like to pull out guns and drive trucks, and all these little girls go for the dolls and associate with faces and relationships. Now please, ladies, don't think that I'm a chauvinist or that women are less than in any way. We're just different. And we're born differently, we think differently, we process information differently. Medically, that's proven. Psychologically, it's proven, and the left can't get over it. So get the academic Bill of Rights says you can teach whatever you want to teach, but you have to present the academic database. Now, basically, you can't lie. And those 2 things can be very important. So if you're listening, get fired up, take a charge, go local, state, and national.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard it. The master himself, Colonel Reid Reasor. Colonel, thank you so much. I want you to send me what was that? The Academic Freedom website. Does it say that one more time?
Yeah, it's Students for Academic Freedom, SAF, and you can just look. You can Google it and go Students for Academic Freedom.
Gotcha.
And it's David Horowitz, and I'll send you the link.
Very familiar. Yep.
He's been working on it for 10 years, and if Harvard right there in the middle of Boston can stand up and say, hey, you're right, we shouldn't discriminate against conservatives. If they can do it, then I think the rest of the nation maybe should have enough balls to do it too.
There's hope. Colonel, thank you so much for calling into the show, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Reid Reasor. Colonel, thank you so much.
Thank you, Christopher. Great show as always. Bye.
All right, have a good night.
Good.
Always love talking to that man. Always do. And, of course, he'll be back on again and again and again. Ladies and gentlemen, the Meat and Potato Show. Conservative talk and awesome.